Grandma uncovers a shocking secret her son-in-law hid for years, and it's enormous. Eleanor Henson had always thought she knew her family inside and out. At 74, she was sharp as a tack. Her knitting needles clicked like a clock as she figured out patterns faster than most teens could text. But that day, as she climbed into her late daughter Anna's attic, everything changed. Gust motes danced like tiny fairies in the beams of sunlight peeking through the small window. Boxes piled high like skyscrapers whispered secrets of the past, and a thrill of adventure coursed through her veins. Then, amidst the clutter and memories, she found it, a heavy, cobweb-covered box that seemed to beckon her closer. When she pried it open, her heart raced. Inside were stacks of letters, neatly tied with fraying string, and a tangle of encrypted documents that looked like something out of a spy novel. Her fingers trembled as she pulled out the first letter. The date was over a decade old. "Dear Anna," it began, but it wasn't from an admirer or a friend. It was from a corporation. Words like blackmail and deception leaped off the page. As she dug deeper, the whispers of betrayal grew louder. What was her son-in-law Mark involved in? The man who had held her hand during Anna's last moments? The man who promised to protect her family? Thoughts flashed through her mind. She had been so naive, trusting him completely. Yet here it was, proof of a hidden life. A dark labyrinth of corporate conspiracies woven into the fabric of her daughter's marriage. It felt like lightning striking. The shock left her breathless. As she pieced together the tangled threads of Mark's duplicity, a knot tightened in her stomach. Every letter revealed complexities and lies that reached into the highest echelons of the industry. Monstrous schemes, illegal backdoor deals threatening to shatter the very foundations of the corporation he worked for. Her family's future now dangled precariously above a precipice. Suddenly, a familiar sound echoed from the stairs. Eleanor's heart raced. She hurriedly shoved the letters back into the box, her mind reeling. Mark's footsteps approached, and a wave of fear washed over her. Did he know she was here? Had he sensed her discovery? Eleanor? Mark's voice was smooth, but tinged with something that set off alarm bells in her mind. She stood frozen, a deer caught in headlights. Still, deep down, a spark flickered. If she could just find the right evidence, she could expose him. But the stakes were so high. The letters could dismantle a major corporation. If Mark sensed she was onto him, who knew what lengths he might go to keep her silent? "Eleanor?" His voice was closer now, slipping through the attic door like a snake ready to strike. Her pulse quickened. What was she willing to risk? Would her need for truth put her own family in danger? "Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning." Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, smash that like button because it really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact! Eleanor held her breath, heart pounding as she crouched in the attic's shadows, straining to hear Mark's footsteps inch closer. The dust swirled around her like a thick fog, amplifying the tension. She could almost feel the energy shifting in the air as fear gripped her tightly. What would he do if he knew? Eleanor? His voice was almost casual, but there was a sharp edge to it that sent chills down her spine. She dared a glance toward the door. The only escape was the window behind her, small and narrow, but it didn't matter. What mattered was bravely confronting the truth. She had to know what Mark was hiding. But before she could think of a plan, a loud crash echoed from below. Eleanor flinched, her heart leaping. It was enough to distract Mark. "Mark, are you okay?" she called, the words tumbling out before she could stop herself. Her voice felt small in the vast space of the attic. There was silence, and then distant yelling echoed back. The sound pulled her like a magnet. She had to look. Eleanor climbed over the boxes, felt the splintered wood beneath her fingers as she maneuvered toward the edge of the attic. She peeked through a small opening, and what she saw made her stomach drop. There was chaos in her living room. A group of masked men were confronting Mark. He stood tall but guarded, hands raised. "I told you, I don't have it," he shouted. Voice strained. The heavy weight of disbelief washed over Eleanor. He wasn't just involved in corporate deals. He was in deep, far deeper than she imagined. What did he owe them? She strained to hear. "You're running out of time. Mark, you've double-crossed the wrong people," one of the men bellowed, his voice low and threatening. Eleanor's blood turned ice cold. A cold sweat broke on her forehead. Suddenly, Mark's expression shifted. A flicker of desperation crossed his face. "You don't understand. I did it for Anna." The sobering revelation hung in the air like a death knell. Eleanor's breath caught. "For Anna?" she whispered, the name twisting like a knife in her heart. "What did you do, Mark?" The men exchanged glances, their eyes narrowing. "We'll be back. You'll wish you told us the truth," one of them threatened, backing toward the door. As the front door slammed, Eleanor's world turned upside down. Mark had secrets buried so deep, it seemed like he was willing to sacrifice everything, all for her daughter. Did he mean for Anna's memory? Or did it involve something dark that ran even deeper? Her blood raced, and suddenly she felt alive with purpose. She had to confront him. The attic couldn't hide her from the storm brewing below. She took a deep breath, stepping back from the opening. What if Mark was not just a grieving husband? What if he was more dangerous than she knew? Or was he simply trying to shield his family from danger? As she gripped the box of letters tightly, a sudden noise ricocheted through the house, a loud thud that knocked her off balance. Eleanor stumbled, heart thrumming in her chest. Was it Mark? Or was it those men again? Would she step into the light and expose the dark web of lies, or retreat, letting fear dictate her next move? The weight of uncertainty rippled through her, and she felt the stirring winds of reckoning push against her. Standing at the edge of the attic, the world below was a minefield waiting to explode. She had to know. She had to uncover the truth. But at what cost? As the door creaked open below, Eleanor knew she had to make a choice. What would she uncover? And had she been blind to the truth all along? Eleanor stood at the edge of the attic, heart pounding, as shadows and chaos swirled below. The gravity of what she'd seen, Mark cornered by masked figures, held her in place, sweat trickling down her back. She could still hear his desperate words echoing in her mind. "I did it for Anna." What did that mean? What lengths had he gone to, and who were those men? She had to confront him. No more hiding. But just as she turned to climb down, frantic knocks echoed against the attic door. Mark, let us in! The voices were sharp, angry. Eleanor froze, the air thickening around her. They'd come back. Something inside her screamed to stay hidden, to keep the letters locked away. But she was no longer the passive observer. She inched towards the window, heart racing. The moment she peeked through, the world twisted again. Mark's face shifted, panic mingling with rage. He yelled something at the door, but the words were lost in the hammering. Suddenly, a loud crash as wood splintered. "Get away from me!" Mark shouted. In a rush, Eleanor climbed higher on the boxes, desperate for a better view. The masked men barged in, their faces obscured by balaclavas. One lunged at Mark, grabbing him by the collar. Eleanor's breath hitched. Tension leaped, tight as a bowstring waiting to snap. She could see the desperation flicker like a candle in Mark's eyes. He wasn't just a husband caught in a snare. There was fear and something deeper. Was he fighting for his life? "Where is it?" the lead intruder growled, shaking Mark violently. "You have one chance." Eleanor felt torn. Her heart raced for Mark, but dread wrapped her tightly. This wasn't the man she thought she knew. What had he put into motion? Then, amidst the chaos, the unexpected happened. A voice rang out, cold and unnervingly familiar. "I know where it is." Eleanor's stomach dropped. She turned slowly, her heart sinking deeper. The voice belonged to Anna, but Anna wasn't here. She was gone. Yet there she stood, almost translucent, a shimmering apparition in the dim light of the attic. "Anna?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "No, Eleanor, it's me," the figure replied, coiling with dread and urgency. It was Anna's style, hauntingly perfect, yet there was something unsettling, an essence of darkness that wrapped around her. "Listen," she implored, eyes wide. "Mark is in trouble, and it's not what you think. They're coming because of me." Eleanor blinked, hard, scanning her daughter's face for truth. But shadows danced behind her eyes, intertwining with the guilt Eleanor had carried for years. The urgency from below escalated. Mark's cries echoed, and Eleanor felt the weight of the world dip. "What do you mean, Anna? What did you do?" The figure stepped forward, shaking her head. "I couldn't tell you then, but Mark took the blame for me. The DNA tests, they were falsified. Your daughter was part of something dark. And now, it's time for the truth." Eleanor stumbled back against the dusty wall. The letters clutched tightly in her hand felt like they were burning. What web of lies had they spun? What sacrifice had Mark really made? Was he truly the villain? Or was he the protector hiding from betrayal? "A warning," Anna continued, voice strong yet laced with sorrow. "If you go down this path, you need to know there are forces watching. They won't stop until the truth is theirs." Eleanor's hands trembled. She felt the chilling realization seep in. She had thought she knew everything about her family, but the revelation this suffocated her, and in that moment, she understood. Trust was a fragile veil easily torn. The attic door creaked open. Shadows emerging, calling her back to the unforgiving light. Eleanor blinked back tears, grappling with the specter of her daughter, suddenly so impossibly close, yet eternally distant. "What will you do?" Anna whispered, fading slowly. Those chilling words hung heavy. Mark's life was unraveled, yet what had? She really lost? Who was more guilty? As the masked figures crashed through the door, the truth loomed. a reckoning that would shake their world to its core. Eleanor felt the crushing weight of every decision roiling inside her. She was on the brink, but which way to fall? Eleanor stood at the edge of the attic, heart pounding, shadows swirling below. Anna's haunting words clung to her. They won't stop until the truth is theirs. The masked figures were about to breach the door, and she felt the weight of everything collapse around her. With a deep breath, she forced herself to focus. "Mark!" she yelled, her voice shaky but determined. "I'm coming!" The clutter in the attic became a blur as she scrambled down the boxes. Panic rising like bile in her throat. She had to get to him, had to protect him. Whatever secrets lay entangled in their lives, they were family. Just as she reached the top of the stairs, time seemed to slow. A loud crash echoed through the house, followed by a muted thud. The air turned electric. She could feel it crawling on her skin. Stumbling forward, she peered down into the chaos, fear rooting her feet to the ground. Mark was struggling against two men. Desperate and wild-eyed, visible fear mingled with fury. But then, Eleanor's world tilted on its axis. Suddenly, a third figure lunged into the scene, the familiar face of her estranged brother Tom. "Stop!" he thundered, stepping in between Mark and the intruders. His voice was a sharp crack, slicing through the tension. Eleanor felt her breath hitch. Why was Tom here? The family feud had kept them apart for years, deep-seated resentment festering like an untreated wound. "What are you doing?" Mark shouted, disbelief etched on his face. "Get out of—" "No!" Tom snapped back, his eyes wild. "I'm not leaving you to them." Eleanor's heart hammered louder. She'd known Tom had his own demons, but this was a new level of chaos. "Who do you think you are?" One of the masked men barked, narrowing his eyes at Tom. "You're not part of this." "Not part of what?" Eleanor whispered, stepping closer to the stairs. The words hung heavy, and for a split second, everything felt as if it could shatter. Then, without warning, one of the masked men hurled a punch that connected with Tom's jaw. A sickening crack echoed through the hallway. He stumbled back, but without hesitation, he fought back, grappling with the intruder. The other two fresh onto the assault. "Mark, run!" Tom yelled, his voice raw and fierce. But before they could escape, the second attacker turned, pulling out a gleaming knife. Eleanor screamed, watching in horror as the blade glinted ominously. In that instant, everything changed. Eleanor lunged forward, a scream tearing from her throat. "No!" The raw sound filled the air, but it felt hollow against the chaos. Mark's face twisted in a primal rage. He surged forward, tackling the knife-wielding intruder, their bodies crashing toward the living room. Floor in a tangle of limbs. And then it happened. As the men struggled in a wild contest of strength, Mark shouted something that made Eleanor's heart stop. "It was you!" he roared, eyes ablaze with betrayal. "You sold us out?" "How could you?" Eleanor's breath caught. Sold out? Tom? Was that who her husband was facing? The weight of the world pressed down, and the room felt like it was folding in on itself. Reality twisted like a pretzel. And Eleanor's head spun with revelations. Tom, a shadowy figure in the background, all connecting to this instant. Eleanor staggered back, clammy hands tightening around the box of letters still clutched to her chest. The truth painted itself dark and ugly across her mind. Suddenly, the door swung open, and in rushed a fourth figure. Eleanor's heart stopped cold. It was Anna, or at least an image of her, but twisted, distorted, eyes alight with darkness and deceit rather than love. "Surprise!" the specter whispered, voice softer but filled with malicious intent. "You never really knew me, did you?" Eleanor's world shattered. She could barely breathe, the realization hitting like a freight train. Her family was not just tangled in secrets, they were shackled to betrayal that went beyond her imagination. Everything she thought, she knew, every memory, every love, was a carefully crafted lie. As the chaos erupted around her, Eleanor stood frozen, lost in the storm of raw emotions. What have you all done?" she stammered, heart racing as shadows threatened to swallow her whole. Mark and Tom wrestled on the ground, but now she couldn't tell who was friend or foe. Anna's haunting gaze bore through her, asking questions Eleanor didn't even know she had. In that moment, uncertainty hung in the air, thick like fog, as the reality of her family's darkness began to choke her breath. Who were these people she thought she knew? And was the truth worth whatever cost it demanded? The night felt alive with unseen dangers, and in the turmoil, Eleanor realized she was standing at the precipice, staring into an abyss that had no bottom. Eleanor stood frozen, heart racing, as chaos erupted around her. Anna's voice, twisted and dark, echoed in her mind, clashing with the reality she thought she knew. Mark struggled on the floor, grappling with Tom and the masked intruders, their grim faces illuminated by the flickering light. The air felt thick with betrayal and anguish. "Mark, get out!" she shouted again, pushing herself to move closer. The sight of her husband wrestling a man who echoed her daughter's haunting features sent a chill cascading down her spine. But it was then that the world spun off its axis. A deafening crash tore through the house, shaking the walls. Eleanor's breath hitched, and, in an instant, everything shifted. From the shadows of the hallway, a figure emerged, tall, cloaked, face obscured by a hood. "Enough!" The voice was deep, resonating like thunder. It sliced through the chaos, demanding attention. Everyone froze. The intruders released their hold on Mark, faces turning to the new figure in a mix of fear and uncertainty. "Who the hell are you?" one of the masked men spat, stepping back, fists clenched. The tension in the room crackled like electricity in the air. Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest. Something primal stirred within her, urging her to confront the unknown. The hooded figure stepped forward, the dim light catching a glint of something metallic in their hand. A clipboard. "You don't know who you're dealing with," the figure said, and slowly they removed the hood, revealing a face Eleanor thought she'd never see again. "Mom?" The name slipped from Eleanor's lips, barely above a whisper. It couldn't be. Standing before her, looking just as Eleanor remembered, was her mother. A woman who had disappeared without a trace 2 decades ago. The room went eerily silent, the chaos around her fading away. "What? How?" Eleanor stammered, heart racing, cheeks flushed with confusion and disbelief. Her mother smiled softly, a bittersweet expression mingled with sadness. "I had to protect you, Eleanor. I had to protect all of you." Mark blinked, shock painted across his face. "How are you here? You vanished." "I know," she said, voice steady and calm, regardless of the chaos. "They were coming for me, and I thought it was safer for you to believe I was dead. But they found me. They always find me. The intruders exchanged confused glances, their resolve wavering. Their leader, a tall man with ice-cold eyes, stepped back. "You," he spat, gripping his weapon tighter. "You were supposed to be—" "Bon?" "Yes, I thought so too," her mother interjected, her tone sharper than Eleanor had ever heard. "But you underestimated me, and clearly you've underestimated my family." In that moment, everything crashed down on Eleanor. Her mother was alive, tangled in the same web of darkness. But what did that even mean for her? Her eyes darted between Mark's confused expression and Tom's stunned silence as she pieced it all together. The room erupted into chaos again as the intruders readjusted their plan. "We need to get out of here! Now!" they yelled, suddenly back to their mission. But Eleanor felt like the ground had been pulled from under her. "What did you do, Mom?" she whispered, her world tilting once more. "What are you hiding?" "Everything," her mother replied solemnly. "Everything you think you know is a lie." Just then, the lights flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. Screams erupted. In the mayhem, Eleanor felt something sharp graze her arm, followed by the thud of bodies against each other. When the lights flickered back on, the masked figures were nowhere to be seen, evaporated into the shadows. Eleanor's breath quickened. What just happened? But as she turned to face her mother, she saw that same haunted look swimming in her eyes that had been there all those years ago. "It's just beginning, Eleanor." Panic clawed at her chest. This was no ordinary family secret. "What did you bring us into?" The question hung heavy in the air, thick with uncertainty. As her mother reached out, the world faded again, and Eleanor realized this was far from over. She was on the brink of uncovering something that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. But could she handle the truth? And who could she trust when her own family was shrouded in conspiracy? Eleanor blinked, reeling from the revelation of her mother's return. How can this be real?" Her voice trembled, every question bubbling to the surface as shadows danced around them. Beside her, the chaos paused, breaths caught in their throats. Time felt suspended. Mark, still breathing heavily from his struggle, shot confused glances between Eleanor and her mother. You vanished. We thought you were dead." His voice wavered, a mix of disbelief and anger. The intruder stood frozen, uncertain now that this mysterious third party had emerged. Even Anna, or the apparition of her, seemed perplexed by the unexpected arrival. But just as Eleanor opened her mouth to demand answers, the floor creaked ominously. The house seemed to shudder, a low rumble echoing through the walls. "What is happening?" she gasped, panic bubbling inside. Then, with a loud crack, the attic ceiling above them gave way, chunks of plaster tumbling down like rain. Eleanor barely had time to duck as dust erupted, thickening the air. A terrifying sense of foreboding washed over her. She had to get to Mark, protect him from whatever was coming. As the debris fell, she caught sight of a shadowed silhouette on the other side of the attic stairs. A large, dark figure loomed in the dust, and fear surged through her. "Eleanor!" her mother shouted, reaching for her, eyes wide with panic. "We need to—" But before she could finish, the shadow lunged forward. The room erupted into chaos again. Eleanor's heartbeat quickened as she felt the air crackle. The dark figure lifted a gloved hand, revealing a remote. With a click, the whole room fell silent, all sound extinguished like an extinguished candle. "No!" Mark shouted, grabbing Tom's arm. "What are you doing?" Eleanor felt an icy chill creep through the room. The shadow spoke, voice smooth and sinister. "Tonight, a reckoning unfolds." The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through her. It was Russell, the head of the corporation Mark had been entangled with, the very person Eleanor had sworn to protect her family from. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. "I thought this was all about protecting the family," he sneered, his gaze flitting between them like a hawk eyeing its prey. "But clearly, I was wrong. It's time to tighten the noose." In that moment, uncertainty crashed over Eleanor like a tidal wave. Mark had been in cahoots with Russell? Was that why he was in over his head? What did it mean for the promise he made to protect their family? It all felt like pieces of a puzzle that led to a dark void. Then, out of nowhere, Tom lunged at Russell, but the dark figure easily sidestepped him. In a blink, he tossed the remote aside. The entire room shook again, a pulsating energy like a drumbeat echoing in her chest. Eleanor felt her mind race. If Russell was here, then everything she thought she knew was crumbling. "You set him up!" she cried, pointing at Mark, desperate for clarity. "You used him!" But before Russell could answer, there was a simultaneous crashing sound from the front door. The masked intruders surged back into the room, having seemingly regrouped. Without hesitation, they advanced toward Eleanor, eyes burning with purpose. "Nove!" one of them shouted, grabbing her mother roughly. "You don't have time for this!" "No, Mom!" Eleanor screamed, her voice cracking. She rushed forward, but Mark grabbed her arm, holding her back. "No, you can't. Stay safe." "Safe?" she shouted back, tears stinging her eyes. "What is safety, Eleanor? We're trapped in a nightmare." Then, as if ignited by her words, a blinding flash illuminated the room. Russell's shadow transformed, spinning toward her like a storm. "Enough!" he bellowed, his voice echoing against the walls, shaking the very foundation of their fragile reality. The unforgettable truth hit Eleanor, not just about Mark or Tom or even her mother. It was about love, betrayal, and the lies woven deeper than she realized. Everything was connected, and at the heart of it was a darkness so profound it threatened to consume them all. As the flashes subsided, Eleanor found herself standing on the edge of chaos, mind reeling. All she had ever known, all her family stood intertwined in deceit. Palms trembling, breath quickening, Eleanor had to decide. Trust Mark or betrayal promised a reckoning she couldn't escape. Eleanor blinked, reeling from the revelation of her mother's return. How can this be real? Her voice trembled, every question bubbling to the surface as shadows danced around them. Beside her, the chaos paused, breaths caught in their throats. Time felt suspended. Mark, still breathing heavily from his struggle, shot confused glances between Eleanor and her mother. You vanished. We thought you were dead." His voice wavered, a mix of disbelief and anger. The intruders stood frozen, uncertain now that this mysterious third party had emerged. Even Anna, or the apparition of her, seemed perplexed by the unexpected arrival. But just as Eleanor opened her mouth to demand answers, the floor creaked ominously. The house seemed to shudder, a low rumble echoing through the walls. "What is happening?" she gasped, panic bubbling inside. Then, with a loud crack, the attic ceiling above them gave way, chunks of plaster tumbling down like rain. Eleanor barely had time to duck as dust erupted, thickening the air. A terrifying sense of foreboding washed over her. She had to get to Mark, protect him from whatever was coming. As the debris fell, she caught sight of a shadowed silhouette on the other side of the attic stairs. A large, dark figure loomed in the dust, and fear surged through her. "Eleanor!" her mother shouted, reaching for her, eyes wide with panic. "We need to—" But before she could finish, the shadow lunged forward. The room erupted into chaos again. Eleanor's heartbeat quickened as she felt the air crackle. The dark figure lifted a gloved hand, revealing a remote. With a click, the whole room fell silent, all sound extinguished, like candles snuffed out. "No!" Mark shouted, grabbing Tom's arm. "What are you doing?" Eleanor felt an icy chill creep through the room. The shadow spoke, voice smooth and sinister. "Tonight, a reckoning unfolds." The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face that sent shockwaves through her. It was Russell, the head of the corporation Mark had been entangled with, the very person Eleanor had sworn to protect her family from. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. "I thought this was all about protecting the family," he sneered, his gaze flitting between them like a hawk eyeing its prey. "But clearly I was wrong. It's time to tighten the noose." In that moment, uncertainty crashed over Eleanor like a tidal wave. Mark had been in cahoots with Russell? Was that why he was in over his head? What did it mean for the promise he made to protect their family? It all felt like pieces of a puzzle that led to a dark void. Then, out of nowhere, Tom lunged at Russell, but the dark figure easily sidestepped him. In a blink, he tossed the remote aside. The entire room shook again, a pulsating energy like a drumbeat echoing in her chest. Eleanor felt her mind race. If Russell was here, then everything she thought, she knew, was crumbling. "You set him up!" she cried, pointing at Mark, desperate for clarity. "You used him!" But before Russell could answer, there was a simultaneous crashing sound from the front door. The masked intruders surged back into the room, having seemed to regroup. Without hesitation, they advanced toward Eleanor, eyes burning with purpose. "Move!" one of them shouted, grabbing her mother roughly. "We don't have time for this!" "No, Mom!" Eleanor screamed, her voice cracking. She rushed forward, but Mark grabbed her arm, holding her back. "No, you can't! Stay safe!" "Safe?" she shouted back, tears stinging her eyes. "What is safety anymore? We're trapped in a nightmare!" Then, as if ignited by her words, a blinding flash illuminated the room. Russell's shadow transformed, spinning toward her like a storm. "Enough!" he bellowed, his voice echoing against the walls, shaking the very foundation of their fragile reality. The unforgettable truth hit Eleanor. Not just about Mark or Tom or even her mother. It was about love, betrayal, and the lies woven deeper than she realized. Everything was connected, and at the heart of it was a darkness so profound it threatened to consume them all. As the flashes subsided, Eleanor found herself standing on the edge of chaos, mind reeling. All she had ever known, All her family stood intertwined in deceit. Palms trembling, breath quickening, Eleanor had to decide. Trust Mark or expose the truth she barely grasped. With the darkness closing in, she faced Russell and the masked. Men, fingers shaking, heart racing. What would she uncover, and what would she lose in the process? The ground felt unsteady beneath her, and the haunting echoes of betrayal promised a reckoning she couldn't escape. Then, unexpectedly, the dim lighting flickered, and a deep rumble shook the foundation, a sound like thunder rolling in the distance. Everyone turned, confusion blurring their features. The door burst open, flooding the room with light, and a figure emerged. "Stop!" the new arrival shouted, stepping boldly into the fray. Eleanor blinked and her breath caught. It was Anna, but it wasn't the ghostly version she'd seen earlier. This was flesh and bone, vibrant and real. Memories clamored in her head. Her daughter's laughter, warm smiles. "What's happening?" Eleanor managed to croak out, disbelief. Battling hope. Could it be a trick? As the room spun with confusion and chaos, Eleanor's world hung in balance, and the question hung ominously in the air. Would she plunge into the truth, even if it cost her everything? Eleanor stared at Anna, a whirlwind of emotions cascading through her. "You're really here?" Confusion twisted her heart. The chaos around her faded for a moment, her daughter's presence illuminating the dark corners of her uncertainty. But as Anna reached out, the flicker of hope was torn away when another crash echoed from the hallway. "Get back!" Mark shouted, but Eleanor couldn't tear her eyes from Anna. The breath caught in her throat. "Mom, believe me!" "I believe you, Anna!" Eleanor screamed, her voice raw with fear. "But this isn't right! You shouldn't be here!" Suddenly, the room erupted into pandemonium again. The masked intruders pressed forward, their intentions shifting from hunting prey to terror. Eleanor's eyes darted around. Russell's expression darkened, fury bubbling beneath his calm facade. Then, another voice ruptured. The tension, a deep, chilling tone that resonated through the walls. "Enough!" In an instant, the dim attic was filled with an otherworldly glow. Everyone froze, eyes wide. The shadows twisted and danced as an ominous figure materialized at the entrance, its features obscured by a thick fog that glimmered with malice. Eleanor's heartbeat thudded in her ears. "What is happening?" she gasped, feeling the weight of the room pressing down on her chest. "Who are you?" Anna shouted, stepping protectively next to her mother. As the figure drew closer, the fog receded, revealing a face Eleanor never expected. A face so familiar, yet terrifying. It was her father, the man they'd all thought was dead for years, a ghost from a past she dared not revisit. "Surprise!" "Family," he said, voice smooth as stone. "No, it can't be," Eleanor whispered, her heart racing. She stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. Memories flooded her, his laughter, the warmth of his embrace. "You vanished! You abandoned us!" Her father chuckled softly, each word slicing through her like glass. "I had to keep you safe, just like your mother." His gaze flicked between Eleanor and Mark, a knowing glimmer sparking in his eyes. "And I see my dearest Anna still plays her role well." But what role? A sick realization began to dawn. "Puss? Oh, sweet boy," he crooned, stepping forward. "I want my family back, whole and unbroken. But secrets have a way of unraveling everything." Eleanor's stomach dropped. Something inside felt wrong. dread hanging heavy. "What secrets?" she asked, voice shaking. "What have you been hiding?" "Don't you see, Eleanor?" he replied, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "The truth was never yours to know." Suddenly, Anna stepped forward. "You're a monster, all of you!" Her voice quivered, but held defiance. "You've hurt this family for too long." In that moment, her father's expression morphed from amusement to rage. "Hurt? I sacrificed everything for this family. Your mother and I worked hard to build a legacy. And what did you do? You let my plans slip through your fingers." "Plans?" Eleanor echoed, horrified. Was her family tied to something darker? Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed down the stairs. A group of armed men flooded into the attic, guns raised, storming the room like a hurricane. Screams ripped through the air as the masked intruders scattered, bewildered. "Get down!" Mark shouted, pushing Eleanor to the floor. Eleanor's heart raced faster than ever. It was chaos. The room spun. Amidst the chaos, her father stood tall, fearlessly issuing commands. "Get them!" he roared, authority lacing his words. The armed figures advanced, and Eleanor's heart plummeted. "What is happening?" she cried, trembling. And just then, a blinding flash enveloped the room. Everything went white. Time seemed to freeze. Eleanor felt a pull, as if reality itself had torn apart. Then darkness. When the glare faded, Eleanor found herself alone in an empty hallway, the pounding echoes of the battle ringing in her ears. But the air was different, thick with an impending revelation. The silence loomed heavy, and in that haunting quiet, a voice whispered from behind her, "Welcome to the truth." She whirled around, heart racing, breath faltering. Who was there? What truth awaited her? As dread coiled in her stomach, she felt it. Everything she thought she knew was ready to dissolve into something unrecognizable. The walls closed in. What would she find in the dark? And was anyone truly safe anymore? The questions tangled in her mind as she realized the storm wasn't over. It had just begun. Eleanor stood there, her heart in her throat, the weight of everything crashing down. "Welcome to the truth," the voice whispered again. Confusion fogged her mind. The hallway felt like a vortex, spinning and pulling her in. She hadn't dreamed she would find herself alone, lost in this shadowy realm. What truth? She struggled to say. The walls seemed to pulse, vibrating with unspoken secrets. But the only answer was silence, thick and heavy, wrapping around her like a cold blanket. Then came a loud crash, shattering the stillness. The anxiety shot through her like lightning. She turned just in time to see her mother's face twist in alarm, a look of pure terror flooding her features. "No!" she shouted, reaching out. Eleanor spun around, and that's when she saw it. A flash of silver. A knife glinted in the dim light, slicing through the air like a predator ready to strike. It belonged to Russell. His eyes danced with wild glee. "Run!" Anna yelled, her fierce voice piercing through the fear. But Eleanor stood frozen, eyes locked on the chaos unraveling before her. With one swift motion, Russell lunged toward Mark, the blade glinting like a deadly star, aimed straight for his heart. "This ends here," he shouted, the anger streaking his face. "Mark!" Eleanor's scream echoed a raw plea. Time slowed as adrenaline pulsed through her veins. She felt the world tilt, a roller coaster plunging into the abyss. But in that split second, something even more shocking happened. Mark didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped to the side, a flicker of a smirk tugging on his lips. "You can't win, Russell." "What?" Eleanor gasped, a tide of confusion crashing over her. The air crackled, charged with an energy she hadn't anticipated. "Mark, what are you doing?" Her voice broke, panic rippling through her. And then, in a stunning twist, Mark did something she'd never expected. He grabbed Russell's wrist with a speed and strength that caught everyone off guard, twisting it so the knife fell to the floor with a clatter. "Let me show you something," Mark said, voice steady, eyes piercing. "You don't know everything." Eleanor's stomach dropped. She felt lightheaded, like the ground had slipped from beneath her. Had Mark been playing a game all along? "What do you mean?" As Mark glared at Russell, a flicker of grief crossed his face. "Your mother left because of you. She had to protect herself, protect us." The silence hit like a tsunami. Eleanor felt her breath hitch. "What do you mean?" "I did everything for us!" Mark shouted, turning fierce eyes at Russell. "I thought you'd want to keep her safe, to build something real. The corporation? It's a facade, a lie we built together." Eleanor's mind reeled. He had been working with Russell? Or was this another manipulation? Before she could process, another crash echoed, and the intruders stormed back into the room, and Eleanor recognized one of them. It was Tom, but this time he wasn't just there. His eyes burned with something beyond anger, something darker. Tom locked eyes with her. "You don't get it!" he screamed. "None of you do! I've seen what happens when the truth is revealed." Eleanor felt like she was gasping for air. "What truth?" she pleaded, the thread of reality unraveling before her. But then, as if the universe decided to push her to the edge, Tom turned to Russell, rage spilling over. "You're a coward for hiding behind lies. All of you." Suddenly, another figure emerged from the shadows. A tall woman with long, dark hair and piercing blue eyes. "Enough!" she yelled through the chaos, voice firm, silencing everyone. Eleanor's heart raced. This woman looked familiar, but how? "Mom?" Mark whispered. No, it couldn't be her. It wasn't possible. "What are you doing here?" he asked, confusion playing on his face, deepened by recognition. As the truth loomed closer, Eleanor felt the world twist even further. Secrets had a way of dismantling everything. And now, as faces turned to her, she wondered, what reality had they been living in? Was it all a lie? Everything she thought she knew. The layers peeled back like an onion, exposing raw emotion and heartache beneath. Could she trust anyone now? With the mystery unfolding, time hung heavy in the air, stifling every breath. And as the room fell into an uneasy silence, a terrifying question loomed over them all. Who was truly in control of their fate? Or had they all been mere puppets in a game too dangerous to comprehend? Eleanor's mind raced, the room shuddering with the weight of revelations. "You've hurt this family for too long," Anna said, stepping forward with fierce resolve, arms protecting her mother. Russell smirked, but there was a crack forming in his facade, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "You think you can turn this around?" he challenged, voice dripping with contempt. But there was an urgency beneath his bravado, a sense that his carefully strung web was unraveling. "Enough!" Eleanor's mother stepped into the light, a fierce determination igniting in her eyes. We've danced around shadows for too long, Russell. It ends tonight." In that moment, Eleanor felt the tide shift. The power was returning to them. Hope, a fragile thing, flickered alive in her chest. Tom's expression morphed from rage to confusion. "Mom, you're alive?" "Of course I am," she snapped. "I've watched over you all. But you've turned this family into a battlefield." "We're not enemies, Tom. We're family." Mark, still side by side with Eleanor, clenched his jaw. "Russell, you've manipulated everyone here. You think control is power? It's poison." As the light began to brighten, illuminating the room, Eleanor felt something swell within her. Courage, fierce and raw. "We're done believing lies," she declared, her voice shaky but clear. The atmosphere shifted again. Tension crackled like electricity. Russell's eyes narrowed, and he took a step back. "This isn't over," he spat, but his confidence faltered. With a swift movement, Eleanor lunged for the knife that had clattered to the floor earlier. Her hand closed around the cool metal, grounding her as the familiar weight steadied her resolve. "You're wrong. It is over." In a tense heartbeat, the room held its breath. Eleanor raised the knife, pointed directly at Russell. "No more lies. You will not hurt my family again." And there it was, the moment of truth that hung like a pendulum. Everyone waiting. The room a tableau of fear, determination, and hope. Slowly, Russell raised his hands in surrender. "Fine, I'll walk away. For now. But remember, I always find a way back." Without another word, he retreated, the masked men circling back, but not daring to engage. They melted into the shadows, retreating into the night, as if swallowed by darkness itself. The air began to clear, tension lifting like a dense fog. As Eleanor exhaled, the fight left her body. She looked at the people around her, their faces raw with emotion, wearing expressions of relief mixed with lingering apprehension. "Mom," Tom started, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I didn't know. I thought you left us." "I would never abandon you," she replied, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I fought to keep you safe, even when it felt like I wasn't there." Mark took Eleanor's hand, their fingers intertwining. As the remnants of their conflict lingered in the air, a profound understanding washed over them. Truth held weight, and love held them together. Gathering the scattered documents that had once kept them captive, Eleanor felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Whatever came next, they would face it united. The bonds strengthened by the trials and betrayals they overcame. Their journey wouldn't be without challenges, but for the first time, they faced the dawn with courage grounded in love and loyalty. They stepped into the light, the shadows receding behind them, leading them toward the promise of a brighter future, a fresh start, free from the burdens of the past. The warm sunlight washed over them, illuminating their tentative smiles and the new resolve. In their hearts, this was their moment, a new beginning, a chance at healing, and a promise to never walk in darkness again. And remember, you have to subscribe right now to the channel so you don't miss any of the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button right now to feed the algorithm. You won't regret it. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. We want to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends. Your support makes a difference, and only real fans understand the importance of staying connected. Join the community and let's uncover what's next together.